different byways of Trinidad and Tobago. Martin George joins me via Zoom. Good morning, Mr. George. Good to see you.
Yes, hi, good morning to you, JW, and definitely good to see you on the program. And
Yes.
good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Excellent. Loving the early morning swag. I see a pop the shirt there. Yes, man. Yes. I'm watching the front of the Guardian today, and I recognize that this is going to be clearly a discussion that might dominate the headlines for a couple of days. Funny enough, I had the acting commissioner with me on Monday, and for better or for worse, his ratings and his particular popularity metrics are up. So there is this talk now of obviously him going on this particular vacation. A new person is acting as commissioner. What's happening at this point in time?
Well, JW, I think that it's really up to the PSC to bring some clarity to the nation as to what exactly is happening because it is confusing for everyone. I'll tell you why. You have to remember the role of the Police Service Commission constitutionally is that they are the ones who appoint the commissioner to office. So, in other words, under the Constitution, they have the power to appoint to office. They have nothing to do with, and they have no control over a contract which may be offered to a commissioner. So even when one looks at the question of what occurred, where they said, well, the contract was coming to an end, and then they said, well, look, they appointed him as acting commissioner, one has to question even that process. And I'll tell you why. Because whether you have a contract of employment from the government or not, the question is, if you have been appointed constitutionally as the Commissioner of Police, does that appointment automatically end because your contract has come to an end? Because, in other words, the contract of employment is separate, distinct, and apart from your appointment to the office by the Police Service Commission. So I have seen persons have started raising questions in the public domain about this, and I think that these questions are valid and they are meritorious, and they really ought to bear further discussion, because you have to be very careful when you are wielding these constitutional powers that you make sure you dot every I and cross every T.
Well, I'm just saying it begs the question, though. It begs the question, what will be the commissioner's position when he comes back from vacation? Because clearly, I wonder if he's even going to get back the seat.
But not just that. The thing is, when you have a scenario where they have now, because the conundrum deepens, because if it is that you say that you have reappointed him to act as commissioner, okay, so then what is his substantive post then? You ask yourself, in other words, because remember, this is not someone who came up through the ranks. So it's not to say that, it was a deputy commissioner, so therefore, when he's no longer acting as commissioner, he reverts to his substantive post as deputy commissioner. No, this is someone who came in from outside the police service. So the procedure is that you basically, I think they swear them in as an SRP, and then you appoint them as commissioner. But the point is, if it is that you are no longer holding the post of commissioner, if it is that you are no longer acting as commissioner, is it then what? You're just an SRP? You ask yourself, what is the scenario? And it just appears to be some fumbling and bumbling and bungling that could have been avoidable from the start. Because if it is that you felt that this 3-year time limit was so critical, then you would have known this well in advance. You would have had more than enough opportunity to get your house in order and ensure that you put things in place to have a smooth process whereby you can say, well, okay, look, I'm engaging in the process of sending out the advertisement and, inviting persons to apply. I mean, of course, the government had the recent change in the legislation, so maybe that could have pushed the timeline. So, I mean, you could understand maybe the PSC was put with their backs against the wall, but notwithstanding that, you knew the timelines you were working with, and this ought to have been handled in a better manner.
So I'm wondering now, based on his supporters, and obviously the acting commissioner Griffith on Monday mentioned his particular numbers and his approval ratings. Are his supporters to believe there is a plot to remove him with all the semantics happening at this point in time?
Well, I mean, the point is, I have absolutely no evidence of that. So, I mean, I would not delve into the realm of idle speculation, JW. At the end of the day, there is a process that ought to have been followed. And, even the appointment of the investigative team headed by former Justice of Appeals Stanley John, I think the PSC, at least in that regard, may have appeared to follow some advice that I offered gratuitously on the airwaves when I made reference to the Privy Council case of Jamaicans for Justice versus Police Service Commission. What that case was about, and I mean, the good thing about it, it's a Privy Council decision, so it's binding on us here in Trinidad and Tobago. In that case, this group of Jamaicans, they challenged their Police Service Commission in Jamaica, who were seeking to appoint an officer to the position. And they said, hey, listen, you need to do a full and thorough investigation of certain allegations. There were certain allegations in terms of police brutality and other things that, surfaced. And they said, you need to do this investigation. And the Police Service Commission said, well, look, they have referred the matter and, they are awaiting feedback. And the group said, no, you have to do more. You have the duty. And the matter went all the way up to the Privy Council. And the Privy Council ruled in favor of the group, Jamaicans for Justice. The Privy Council said, listen, as a Police Service Commission, you have the duty to ensure that these investigations are carried out. So that way, when you choose someone, whoever it is, all right? So yes. It doesn't matter who it is. When you choose someone, whoever it is, they must be someone who you can tell the public clearly, look, we have investigated any claims, anything, and therefore we are satisfied that this now meets the best criteria for selection to this position, because it's an important position. But, JW, I have said before, this process, we in Trinidad and Tobago, I don't know why we've made it so convoluted, complicated, and, unnecessarily, involved. The appointment of a police commissioner in Trinidad and Tobago has become more complicated than the appointment of a chief justice. It's easier to appoint a chief justice. It's easier to appoint a prime minister. It's easier to appoint an opposition leader than this post of commissioner of police. And we keep making misstep after misstep after misstep.
I'm glad you made that parallel there with Jamaica, because it seems that so many things that happen with our big brothers up north, it literally happens there first and then sometimes here. I want to find out the current situation now with the acting commissioner, McDonald Jacob. Where is he in all of this? He's just running off the bench at this point in time?
Well, I mean, and here's the difficulty. Okay, when Mr. Griffith returns from his vacation, and you see, I mean...
what's going to happen there? Try to walk me through that.
Right. This is exactly the question. What happens there? Because at the end of the day, Mr. Jacob is a substantive office holder of Deputy Commissioner of Police. So therefore, his appointment, of course, yes, the PSC has the power to revoke it, but then they cannot just by whim or fancy say, well, look, we are now putting back Mr. Griffith without the process going through the Parliament. So it creates an embarrassing situation for everyone. And this is something that the PSC ought to have avoided and ought to have managed in a way so as to inspire confidence. Because you cannot say, okay, because you see, the thing is, remember, right now, you have to ask yourself, what is the substantive position or substantive office that Mr. Griffith holds? If it is that you have now send him, well, he's now gone on vacation.
Yeah, and it's so tricky because normally a vacation is either during your tenure or they buy out your vacation. You buy somebody's
That
vacation.
appeared not to be the case because, in
Yeah.
other words, the 3 years had run out, and then now you're talking about going on vacation. So then you ask yourself, well, what is really happening? Because if it is that this vacation issue was a live issue, then before the end of the 3 years, arrangements would have been made to ensure that that vacation was taken so that you don't run into an embarrassing, imbroglio as what is happening here. Because the question you have to ask yourself, what is the substantive position or rank of Mr. Griffith at this point in time? That is what is really the burning issue. And then when he returns to TNT, what is his position? Where are you going to put him? And why is the PSC creating this bogey? Why have they created this monster?
Mr.
Because
George?
you see what is going to happen when Mr. Griffith comes back. And if it is that you remove Mr. Jacob and you say, well, okay, Mr. Jacob, you are no longer acting as commissioner, then how then do you swing back and say, well, look, I am putting back Mr. Griffith? If it is that he has no contract, there's nothing that has been approved by Parliament to say, well, look, we are recommending to that he be appointed as commissioner. So you don't have that yet. So then how do you treat with that?
Mr. George.
And this is a scenario that ought to have been avoided.
Mr. George, I want to thank you for the candor, and by all means, it's yet another play, another day in the drama and the theater that is Trinidad and Tobago. But thanks a lot, and definitely when he returns, I'd love to have you on again so we could probably continue this discussion. And you have yourselves a safe and a productive day.
And have a good morning.
Yes, for sure.